It is my pleasure this evening to welcome both Bob Jacob and Steve Hoffman. Before I introduce them, I'll tell you a little bit about the format. Bob will interview Steve for about an hour till about 8 o'clock, and then we will take questions. If you have received a note card on your way in, we ask that you write the questions on that note card. If you did not receive one and you raise your hand, someone will give you a note card and a pencil. And then at any time during the program tonight, if you would like that question to be taken, just raise your hand and someone from our staff will come and get the question and they'll be brought up front. That's going to be our format for tonight. We should end around 8:30. Our moderator for this evening is Bob Jacob, who has been the managing editor of the Cleveland Jewish News since 2011. Prior to that, he served as news editor of the Chagrin Valley Times, the Solon Times, and the Geauga Times Courier. Mr. Jacob also worked for the Chronicle Telegram in Elyria, Ohio. He is a lifelong Clevelander and a graduate of Cleveland State University. And joining him on stage is Steve Hoffman, who is a graduate of Dickinson College and received his MSW from the University of Maryland and a Master's in Jewish Studies from the Baltimore Hebrew University. Also was a graduate of the Council of Jewish Federations, Federation Executive Recruitment and Education Program, currently serves as president of the Jewish Community Federation of Cleveland. In July of 2001, he became Chief Executive Officer of the United Jewish Communities. Prior to that, in his current position, his professional life had been spent entirely at the Jewish Community Federation of Cleveland, where he began as an associate in the Community Relations Department and later led the Social Planning and Research Departments, as well as supervisory responsibilities for community relations, communications, and other matters before becoming the Chief Professional Officer in December of 1983. He is also the founding director of the Council for Initiatives in Jewish Education on a part-time basis while serving as the Chief Professional Officer of the Federation. Steve, as you may know, always wears many, many hats. He serves on the visiting committee of the Mandel School of Applied Social Science, Case Western Reserve University. He's a board member of the Musical Arts Association, the Cleveland Orchestra, and of the Greater Cleveland Roundtable, an organization devoted to promoting racial harmony in the city of Cleveland. So please join me in welcoming Steve Hoffman, Bob Jacob.
Thank you, Brian. Steve, if I met you for the first time in a hotel lobby in a major American city, and I asked what you do for a living, what would be your 2-minute elevator pitch?
2 minutes? All right, first, can you hear me? Are we good? Okay. Well, what I put on the IRS form is I'm a social worker. And then person usually says, so you counsel people? And I say, no, not exactly. It's not that kind of social work. I do talk with people a lot, but it's usually to get them to part with their money. I'm in the fundraising side of social work, and I'm associated with the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, which is a combination of United Way and the Cleveland Foundation. And only we do it primarily for the Jewish community.
Okay. You mentioned fundraising work. The Federation recently concluded the Campaign for Jewish Needs, raising nearly $30 million. Can you tell us where the majority of that money comes from and how some of it will be used?
Yeah, the majority of the money comes from them. You know, the donors to the Federation, you know, the 29 Well, okay. Can you hear me now? Well, I don't know. Do I control the volume? No.
No, we're being told.
So, how's this? Is that better? But if I turn away, you don't hear it, right? It's a trick. I'm going to ruin this tie. And we'll see. Okay, this is better? Now it's too loud, right? Because we're getting sound. Okay, fine. Just me. Brian, maybe you want to turn that mic off. Oh, okay. Because I'm hearing the echo. Yeah. But okay, until you say it's no good. The 29.6 is I'm trying to think. 90% comes from individual donors, 10% comes from foundations in the Jewish community where the donor is no longer with us, like the Mount Sinai Foundation. I mean, the hospital's no longer with us. But 90% is from donors.
Okay. And how is the bulk of that used and where?
Thought you might ask that. So I asked myself to get the numbers. I could make it up, based on what I think is right, but I'll give it to you this way. The allocable dollars, in other words, it costs us 8.4% to run the campaign. And we also assume that we might not collect 4.25% in any one year. Sometimes you have donors who pass away, unfortunately, and the pledges don't get honored by the family, or they can't, or a business situation turns wrong. And sometimes there's mistakes made. The most famous kind of mistake is a volunteer calls upon a potential donor for a gift. He may call him 10 times to get the gift. None of you have ever been called 10 times probably, but gets called 10 times and he's not happy. And the donor says, George, fictitious name, George, you keep asking me and I keep telling you I don't want to talk about it. I tell you what, George, just do what you want. Just do it and leave me alone. And George calls the Federation and says, put Jerry in for 10,000. That doesn't get paid, it's in the shrinkage. Now, having gotten that out of the way, 44.5% of the money that is allocated goes overseas. 3.6% goes to national agencies like the American Jewish Committee, like the Jewish Community Centers Association of North America, and groups, Jewish Council for Public Affairs, and the like. 24.6% is used for our local human service agencies, Family Service, Belfair, Mandel Jewish Community Center, and our Menorah Park, the Montefiore Home. And then 27.3% is spent on local Jewish education, JECC, our day schools, and the Fund for the Jewish Future, the Commission on Jewish Continuity work that the JECC runs. That's how it gets distributed.
Okay, we're going to talk more about some of those agencies, organizations, and programs. But how does the Federation decide where it spends the money? What's the process behind that, Steve?
So the entire decision-making process is in the hands of the Board of Trustees legally. The Board of Trustees structures itself so that the homework is done by the Allocations Committee. And the Allocations Committee breaks up into a Committee on Human Services, a Committee on Education, there's a Committee on National Agencies. Now we also have a group that's following more closely the international operations. And the Allocations Agency, the Allocations Committee, through various processes, meets with each of the agencies, talks about their budgets, talks about their programmatic goals, talks about challenges that they're having, who's being served, et cetera. And then in the course of the process, the leadership of the Allocations Committee first decides what to recommend as the split between overseas and domestic allocations. And then they take those numbers and they further, and then the committees break them up. And so much is given to education, so much is given to human services. In the overseas agenda, we have two basic divisions. One is the work of the Jewish Agency and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. And then there's another roughly $3 million plus that is spent on programs of our Overseas Connections Committee. That's the work we do in partly in Beit Shan, partly with Havada Shomer, the Army base, the PACT, Parents and Children Together program, Ethiopian preschoolers in Israel, and our women's health program, Isha. And that division is made. And then the allocation subcommittees go to work on how much for JFSA, how much for Belfair, et cetera.
Okay.
And those recommendations are then brought to the Board of Trustees, usually at the July board meeting or late June. And the chair of the allocation committee will do two things. He or she, currently it's Darianowitz, she, will say, here's how we think the money should be divided. She will also give a confidential briefing to the board about issues that arose in the course of the discussions with the agencies about either challenges ahead or special problems if they came up during the process, so that the board is told not only how the money is used, but what some of the challenges or trend lines that the allocations committee thinks the board ought to be aware of or concerned about. And then ultimately it's a board vote.
Mm-hmm. How do the allocation percentages change from year to year? Do they stay roughly the same, or is there something that can push it up or push it down?
They're fundamentally stable because one of the principles that the volunteers have strove for over the years is assuring stability of our agencies. There's a philosophy in Cleveland. It did not originate with me. I happen to agree with it and have promoted it over my tenure, but it predated me. We fundamentally think our agencies know what they're doing, or should know what they're doing. And we trust them because they are closest to the clientele that are being served. We don't think we necessarily, as Federation, know better than they do about what's good for the people they're serving. That doesn't mean we don't have ideas as Federation or things that we learn in other communities or elsewhere in the world. It doesn't mean through our own study of the field, things may occur to us, but we'll raise those with the agencies. Now, in other communities, it's not uncommon for the Federation to say to the agencies, we're turning left. Come left with us or not, your choice, but we are going left. And we're going to fund programs that do, I don't mean left politically, I just mean left versus right. And we're going to fund, and we, the Federation, we're going to fund programs about this, about this, about this. You want to offer them, we'll talk about it. You don't want to offer them, we're going to go find somebody who's going to offer them. We don't operate like that. We talk with the agencies and we may say, we think we ought to go left. The agency may say, you know, it's a good idea. We think we're going to facilitate that. And some wonderful things have come out of that. The whole program of group homes for mentally challenged and intellectually challenged folks and what have you at the Jewish Family Service developed from that kind of discussion. Oh gosh, it may be maybe 28, 30 years ago that we went that route. Toby would remember, maybe. And we had that discussion, and together we turned left. That's how we do it. So we're interested in having stability with our agencies, and therefore we're not really anxious to make sudden shifts in the priorities. Now things occur, events in the world change. There have been years when the demands overseas because of a war or some other crisis demanded unprecedented action from Cleveland, and there might be a blip. I remember at one time, it would be in the early 90s, we were heavily funding services to refugees who were coming in from from the Soviet Union initially, and then suddenly the former Soviet Union, because the Iron Curtain not only fell, the place fell apart. And we had raised some money over and above the annual campaign to help with the Russian, what we call Russian resettlement. And the money was not enough to sustain the services that we were providing through JFSA and our schools and some other places. And we had to make a decision. And so the decision we made back then was to take the money off the overseas line. So there was a significant shift away from money that was sent overseas, even though they also had these issues in Israel, the Russians coming in. But we said we have to be sure that we're able to do the right thing here in Cleveland. And so there was a shift, and it was a significant shift. And after that shift was made, it never went back. So changes occur like that. And we had some shifts as a result of 2008. But they're at the edges, because again, even when we're in trouble, we want to maintain stability for our system of services in the agencies. That's a major commitment we have as the Cleveland Federation.
Okay. The amount of money raised here ranks near the top of the list across the country. How do you account for Cleveland's success in raising that type of money?
Oh, it's clearly the water in Lake Erie. Look, we've been blessed with families and donors who just get it. Partly, I think it's because of our geographical density that we see one another, and therefore, by extension, we care. We're not strangers to one another. You can be a very wealthy person. You can be a person of modest means. You're both going to eat at Jack's. I mean, it happens. I can tell you who they are if I walk into Jack's, and it's not by what they order. But they see each other. They know. They care. They hear about people, and they want to have a community that's caring and compassionate. We're also I'm not ashamed to say, Zionist community. We care a lot about Israel. We care a lot about what happens in Israel. And when the Soviet Union fell, we cared mightily about what happened to the Jews who were coming out, whether it was to Cleveland or to Russia. We told the national resettlement agencies that we would take way more than our fair share because we wanted to both build our population and we wanted to make sure that people were given a good opportunity to get a start in America. And we thought we knew how to do it right. And we have excellent agencies. I mean, really excellent agencies. Many of our agencies are in the top of their class. I'm not going to mention the names because I don't want to insult the other agencies that are excellent, but not nationally proclaimed. But we have, in every category you can think of, an agency or a school that is considered best of class. When you have volunteers who are invested in best of class agencies, they want to make sure that they function. And one of the ways they function is the Federation annual campaign. And so they give generously. And examples are set. And people at all levels of capacity do the best that they can. And generally with a bit of joy. I'm always surprised at the end of the campaign how many notes we get from donors who say, I'm really glad you were successful. You know, it's not a game. They're happy because it means we're going to be a great community another year.
Okay. What percentage of Jewish households contribute to the campaign, and how does that compare to, say, like a decade ago?
Oh, gosh, let's see. I don't know the household numbers. Hetty, do we know?
38,000. Total households?
Yeah.
Total, the population study said there were 38,000 households.
So of the 38,000 households, we probably get gifts from 10,000 households. And a decade ago, we probably got gifts from probably 12 or 13,000 of the households a decade ago.
How do you account for the drop of a few thousand in the households?
Well, part of it, I think, has to do with partly aging. The households actually increase in some respects because you get many more single households as you age. And also there's many more single households because of delay of marriage. And then for a while there we had significant growth in divorce rates. I mean, you know, it's whatever affects America. And people in various categories may not feel they're able to contribute. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is there are probably some generational issues of people feeling not connected enough.
Okay. Your compensation has been a topic of conversation in the community from time to time. Some people go as far as saying they won't contribute to the campaign because of it. Would you put this in perspective for us, please?
I don't discuss my compensation. I'm happy if you want to address that question to Renee Chelm, our board chair, or to the compensation committee, which consists of all the past board chairs of the Federation and one of the current officers.
Okay, let's spend some...
That's my wife. No, teasing.
Let's spend some time, Steve, talking about the leadership team.
Amy, they don't know who you are. It's okay. You're anonymous tonight.
Let's spend some time talking about the leadership team at the Federation
Yeah.
and the people you attract. Would you share insight into the continuity of leadership?
Oh, let's see. We've been pretty fortunate. The top team, I think, have been with us a minimum of 10 years. I'm the longest serving member. I'm at the Federation, it'll be 40 years in September. And the next person who's been at the Federation will be 30 years in March. And then I think we come into 15, 10 years, things like, in terms of the very top team.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other members of the management group that have been with us 28 years. We're pretty fortunate. Some people have left us because we've graduated them onto very important positions. Chip Edelsberg was recruited away from a senior job with us to be the head of the Jim Joseph Foundation in San Francisco. They give away, I think he told me $50 million a year recently. It's a pretty good job if you can get it. And we're very proud of him. We sent another senior member of the staff on to become the director of the Buffalo Federation. Another one went on to become the head of the Boston Federation. Another person left around the time I became the director to become the head of the Washington, D.C. Federation. And so people move on for challenges. And we've sent on 2 people in the last few years to become the chief development officers for Cleveland State University and the Northeast Ohio Medical College. So, it's not bad.
Okay. Let's take a look at areas such as social, health, education, a few others. What's the Federation's responsibilities and challenges in this next group of questions? Social. We're seeing more people need basic food throughout the year. Would you address what the Federation is doing to support the increasing number of needy Jewish families in the Cleveland area?
Yeah. We're doing a few things. First, we did the typical Federation thing. We had a committee look at the situation to make some recommendations about what we ought to do next. One of the primary recommendations is that we needed to beef up the employment help situation, and we're taking steps to do that. We're in discussions right now with the Jewish Family Service about what shape that could take beyond what we're currently doing, and also what we'll do with the Federation ourselves. Second, we're in discussions with the Cleveland Food Bank about how to bring a larger supply of kosher food into our community in a way that will be in larger quantities than they can access today, and in a manner that will be respectful of their situation, so that they don't feel that they are being exposed, so to speak, as somebody in need. We want to do it in a comfortable, non-judgmental way. But we're working with the food bank, in fact, how to do that. You know, a lot of I'm sure many of you know that, you know, you read a lot about food bank affiliates that are in churches and places like that. Our people aren't all that comfortable going into churches and places like that. There are some programs that currently exist, primarily sponsored in the traditional community, but we're talking about how to actually make this much larger, and I think we'll have that in shape within a few months. We also have been raising extra money to deploy to families who are in trouble. We've helped people avoid losing their homes. And the Family Service has emergency funds for people who, you know, just run out. And we can't substitute for the welfare system, but we are a safety net for those who fall through. And we're out there seeking additional funds for that purpose, over and above what we allocate from the annual campaign. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Okay. Question about baby boomers. What are the plans the Federation has to deal with baby boomers who are ready to retire, may need assistance with transportation, medical needs, day-to-day living, or possibly staying in their home and needing all of these?
Yeah. The good news is that the baby boomers who are ready to retire, generally speaking, 99.9%, I'm making up the number, they don't know what you're talking about. They're driving me crazy. They're our volunteers, they're our donors. We have done a study recently of the needs of older people and what's coming down the road at us. So we're talking about what the baby boomers might need in 20 years. And we're just now unpacking it. It has to do with how we're organized as homes for the aged, how we'll be delivering more services to people in their own homes. But apropos the earlier discussion about how we work with our agencies, we want to be hand in glove with the agencies in their own planning about how they perceive this situation, what kind of financing we're going to need. And the biggest challenge probably is going to be the dementia in its various forms. Our agencies are beginning to respond physically to some of these needs and how they're organizing their services. When I met with the consultants, this is the hidden tsunami, unless medical research comes through. And there's some optimism, by the way, from what I've read and what they told me about that. It's possible that in 25 years or more, that there might actually be some solutions to the things that make us crazy. At least those of us who are engaged in caregiving in one fashion or another. So I don't know if it'll be there by the time I need the help, but I know that our agencies are all thinking about where they need to be by that time when the baby boom large numbers will start pushing through. But we're not waiting for that. I mean, we're thinking about what we have to do now for the people who are currently aging.
Segueing into health, what role can the Federation play with those who need help receiving health care, prescriptions to keep them alive, home health care services, and things like that?
So, first, we can make sure through our family service that people are aware of the services and funding sources that are available to them through government. You know, the good news is, at least in America, is that Medicare, with all of its challenges, it solved a lot of problems. I mean, we're not the same America that we were with regard to the services to older people that we were before Medicare was introduced, as well as Medicaid for people who become what they call medically indigent. So government resources are a big part of the answer, but not everybody knows how to navigate it. And so we work with family service to make sure they have advocates who are special expertise that can help people navigate it when it becomes known. Two, we have some people, it's especially true in the survivors community, who are aging now rapidly. I mean, age is catching up with the survivors. And we have 1,000 people who were survivors of one kind or another from either Russia or other parts of Europe, for whom the family service is providing special assistance, medical, some housing assistance, food, medicines. There's a lot of dental work that's being done, a lot of it pro bono by a group of dentists in our community. And and now home health care is needed more and more. And so the Federation, with some of our volunteers, made a special effort to raise $3 million on top of the money we give from the annual campaign for this purpose, so that we'll have a fund available to see us through 2020 without having to invade other sources for people that we need for other kinds of service. And it was done by people actually of a similar age in many cases as the people we're helping, to make sure that this would be taken care of and that they wouldn't have to compete with everything else for attention.
Okay, let's move into the education arena. What percentage of Jewish children receive a day school or synagogue education in Greater Cleveland, and how has that changed over the last decade or so?
I think the results are still such that 85 to 90% of Jewish kids get some kind of Jewish education at some point in their life. The question is, at any one given point in time, I think it's like 60% currently enrolled, but almost everybody is being offered. Of those who are being raised Jewish.
What role does the Federation provide in the learning process for students as well as adults?
Do I get choices? I mean, I don't quite understand.
What does the Federation do to foster Jewish education?
Okay. Well, first, the provision of Jewish education is carried out through our day schools. 4 of them are supported by the Federation itself, and our congregational schools. And the Federation also participates in helping our congregational schools, all through the Jewish Education Center of Cleveland. So we provide basically allocations to the day schools, which we believe they're fundamentally using to support tuition scholarships on the part of the various schools. At the congregation schools, we're providing personnel. We pay for, in the larger congregations, a full-time position in each of them. or a half-time position in the smaller congregations. So in some cases, they're actually the leader of the school. In other cases, they're senior educators. We provide curriculum renewal program through the JECC. We're supporting informal education through the Retreat Center out of the JECC and the Mandel JCC. And we're providing funds for informal education in our congregation schools. We're providing money for in-service training of the teachers. And Seymour will probably kill me because I'm not remembering everything. But quite a bit is provided through the JECC to undergird the entire educational system of Cleveland. We do not have an ideological position about what they should teach. Our objective at the Federation is that every school should be the best they can be about what they want to be. So we embrace the entire range of Jewish community beliefs and understandings and want to help them to be the best that they can be at accomplishing that for those that are affiliated with us in our congregations and in the day schools. Seymour and his team, Marlon Jaffe and Nechama Moskowitz, et cetera, they're working on teacher education and curriculum reforms and helping the directors of the various schools and the teachers and the Ratner Media Center, for example, get the latest material or pedagogical issues nailed down.
Mm-hmm. What are the prospects for a non-Orthodox Jewish high school in Cleveland?
Well, we tried it once. It wasn't fun. Valiant effort, and I would say it's unlikely to emerge in the near term.
Okay. How much of a need do you think there is for that type of a high school?
Well, there's two ways to answer the question. The ideological way is we make a big investment in day schools, elementary school years, preschool, elementary school years. We try to make the investment in middle school years. We tend to lose some of the kids in the middle school years as they think about the transition to high school. So just from a growth, a maturity pattern, it's a shame that you have these wonderful day schools in the non-Orthodox community, and then we can't follow through to reinforce the messages at the very time when the kids are coming to adolescent maturity. I don't know if that's an oxymoron, but I think most people understand what I mean. You know, adolescents are just growing like crazy in identity formation and knowledge. I mean, you know, and at that point in our system, they move into private schools or the public schools, which are excellent. But the Jewish side becomes more challenging because we have to compete with all the activities of after school, and we do through youth groups and camping and other kind of experiences, trips to Israel in the summer. But it's not the same as if it's just woven into your daily education experience. So ideologically, it would seem to be something lacking. On the other hand, the marketplace is telling us that, at least in the past, that the majority of the families think that providing the building blocks in the elementary, maybe the middle school years is great, but when they get to high school, they want the more either elitist private schools for what that brings, or they feel that the public school gives their children a wider array of options to pursue academically and maybe extracurricular than we could possibly do in a Jewish day school. Now, it flies in the face of the great success we have with Mizrahi and the Hebrew Academy. But those parents have other priorities. And so they choose to go to Mizrahi and the Hebrew Academy because those values are primary for them, and they still get a good education. But parents decide differently, so it's a conundrum.
What is the Federation's involvement with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District?
We're involved in several ways. First, we have 200 volunteer tutors that are working in the Bolton School, Buckeye Woodland, the Burer School, the Citizens Leadership Academy, the E-Prep School, we're at the Juvenile Detention Center out here, the STEM High School, and the Village Prep, all with tutoring, primarily with reading skills. Second, in cooperation with the United Way initiative, we just entered into a relationship with the Case Elementary School in Cleveland. It's a very challenging place. I heard that maybe a third of the kids live in homeless shelters at that school. I think I got that right. But if I'm wrong about a third, it's a very high number at this particular school. Anyway, we're working there with the Rainey Institute. It's a program United Way and the Cleveland Metropolitan School District cooked up about saying basically the following. The schools are going to do the best they can to educate the kids in the classroom, but the kids in the district often bring issues along to the school of a social nature, and so they want to try to wrap around, this is the language they use, a social safety net that will reinforce the kid to stay in school and help bat problems away that might lead the kid to dropping out or not attending. So we're working on this with them at the Case Elementary School. With the Rainey Institute was chosen by the district as the primary social service institute to work through. But we're going to probably bring our tutoring program there as well as I think some other resources that they weren't counting on.
Mm-hmm. Why does the Federation think it's important to be involved in the Cleveland Muni District?
Well, we have a philosophy, I have a philosophy, I think it's ours, that you can't have a healthy Jewish community if the community around you is suffering, is sick in a sense. And so we have a responsibility and a self-interest to try and repair the world, tikkun olam, but not just for the sake of tikkun. It's important us to do it so that we'll be successful. That's our selfish interest. And at the same time, we do want to help repair the world. And so and we believe that one of the ways we can do that is by intervening as early as possible with young people to give them a chance. You could pick anywhere along the age spectrum you want to intervene. You could intervene in high school. You could try to encourage people to not drop out. But if they're not given the skills early enough, it makes it harder to stay in high school. So we kind of decided that the target audience was going to be elementary school kids. We're going to try to get them to read and other things because we thought reading was the biggest access to whatever else they're going to have to do. And that's why we're cutting in. We want to help these kids have a chance in America. The government's responsibility is to work on the big issues. I think it's the job of nonprofits to pick the places where they have strength and intervene there to help individuals pull themselves up when they want to.
Okay. I want to continue with a few more questions about the city of Cleveland. When the Federation moved in 2010 to Beechwood, there was talk that there would be a presence in Cleveland. We're hearing a little bit about the presence tonight with the Muni School District. There are some institutions there. Temple Tifereth Israel has a presence. Bethel, the West Temple, There's Chabad's at Case and now downtown Cleveland State, and a Hillel at Case also. What other presence is there for the Federation in the proper Cleveland metro area?
In the metro area, we're everywhere.
Okay. What about in like the Cleveland city
Okay,
limits?
so in the city of Cleveland, what does it mean to be involved in the city of Cleveland? So we've actually intensified our efforts in the Cleveland Public Schools. We have also intensified efforts in summer and vacation food programs. I think most of us know that a lot of nutrition is provided in schools today through breakfast and lunch programs. The only problem with that approach is when the school's closed. You know, the kids are actually sent home on weekends with backpacks with food in them in many of these programs. But when you're on winter break, you know, we don't say Christmas break, but when you're on winter break or the summer, those programs don't exist. So some years ago, there was a group, I think it was called the Children's Hunger Alliance or something, that was working on this, and we joined with them. We learned from that program that there might be some other ways to do it, and so now we're working with others, groups, and in different locations, and we're growing a program where over the winter break, we provided programming and meals to 100 plus kids in the Cleveland inner city. And over the summer vacation, we touch hundreds of kids with activities. And it's a pretty tough situation. A couple of years ago, we were doing this through public libraries. And what we were observing was that preschoolers were coming with older siblings to the library because there was food and a place to park the kid all day with the older sibling. I'm talking about the preschoolers coming with the 7-year-old. We're not talking about teenagers here, okay? And they're parked, and our volunteers were engaged with almost infants, so to speak. Not infants, you know, they were toddlers. It's tough, but anyway, so we're into that. And then there's the Global Cleveland Initiative, which is another thing we've done since 2010. There was a lot of talk in Cleveland for a long time that one of the ways you can improve the city is by increasing the population. Al Ratner, as some of you know, is a leader of the effort about, one of the leaders of it, how are we going to make Cleveland greater? How are we going to make Cleveland a better place? And one of the things he talks about is population stagnation does not lead to a better place. You have to actually grow your population because America is growing. If you don't grow with it, you become politically less significant and you become less economically significant. So one of his ideas was we can grow through immigration. And he was not alone. There was a lot of talk about it, but nothing was happening. A lot of people had ideas, et cetera. We decided as the Federation that we were going to pull all the different parties together and use our organizing skills. We're pretty good at organizing, making things happen, or as I like to say, bringing order out of chaos. We're pretty good at that, actually. A lot of experience. We work with Jews. And so we did this in the general community, and we brought all the players we could to the table. We had all the banging around that goes on, and then we began to test some ideas, and we were able to, we put some money into commission reports and recommendations that they drew from everybody, and we provided volunteer leadership and other professional leadership to drive the whole thing to a proposal that people would support. And then we recruited the Huntington Bank to step in for $100,000 a year. We joined the Huntington Bank at the same level, and then we went to the Cleveland Foundation, the Maltz Family Foundation, and some others, and we put the initial budget, and the thing is up and running. It's so successful, It even has a second director. First one's gone, there's a new director. That's how you know you're being successful. Continuity past crisis. And we're working at it. And we're seeing some green shoots coming out. It's another way that we're invested in the larger Cleveland community.
Let's talk a little outside of Cleveland, although it's still close to home here. Israel and World Jewry, it's very close to your heart, I know, and probably everybody here. What programs does the Federation offer or is involved in, and how successful are they in Israel and around the world?
Well, there's two kinds of programs that we're involved in. First, they're the programs that we support that are provided by the Jewish Agency for Israel and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. And through those programs, at the Joint, we are feeding 250,000 people in the former Soviet Union. I mean, providing food, medicine, home health care to about 250,000 people every year. Those of you who have been to Russia with us know that you climb up 4 or 5 flights of stairs. Nobody seems to live on the first 4 floors in these walk-ups in Russia, and there you find an older person who is usually unable to get out of their apartment, and so everything has to be brought to them. Or occasionally the volunteers will pick them up and literally carry them down the steps to go see a doctor or something like that. And there's 250,000 people like this. And the Joint is also working with poor Jewish families that have young kids. And through the Jewish Agency, we're providing summer camps for kids in Russia and elsewhere in Eastern Europe, roughly 6,000 to 10,000 kids a year, depending on how much money is available. Often, it's the first contact a young Jewish person in Russia will have with Jewish identity and Jewish life. We're also providing, through the Jewish Agency, money for Birthright, in addition to what we provide for Birthright, to bring older kids to Israel for their first experience. And then we have the Masa program, which takes kids from around the world, including some of ours, to Israel for a program that runs usually 5 months to a year, either a semester abroad or a longer service program. So we're involved in all those things. That's one kind of, one quick summary. Then there's the programs I ticked off earlier. Through the Parents and Children Together program, I was told today that we are affecting 4,200, just Cleveland, 4,274 children and parents in the program that provides preschool learning opportunities for Ethiopian immigrants. I think most people have heard me say that when we started this program in 1998, 52%, that's, yeah, I think 48% of Ethiopian preschoolers failed kindergarten in Israel. 48% failed it. The normal failure rate is 4%. So a Sabra, about 4% of the kids get left back in kindergarten, 48% of Ethiopians. Within a few years of our first intervention in Beersheba, we knocked the Ethiopian rate down to 4%. That's a pretty good accomplishment. And we've been working at it every year since then. So we're still in the program. And we also found you can't just work with the kids, you have to work with the parents. And so we're doing it, and that's why we're touching 4,274, just as Cleveland. Other federations joined us, and we were ultimately able to reach 70% of the Ethiopian preschoolers across Israel. Before we touched it, nothing was happening. There was a lot of talk at the JDC about the need to do something. We stepped in and said, we'll be Ben Nun, the guy who jumped into the Red Sea first. And everybody else, they followed. Cleveland made that difference. We have a program at Havad HaShomer and another base. Is it 82 or 3? 80? 80, okay. It's a men's base and a women's base. These are people who are, in colloquial terms, they're recruits who are social misfits. But the Israeli army has said, we're going to give you a second chance in life to straighten yourself out. And they put them through a special training program before they go on to basic training. And through our work, this is done by the Israeli army. We came along and said we want to help. In the beginning, we helped them with computer programs because that was a big deal in 1998 when we first got started. We don't do that anymore. The world has gone a different direction, thank God. But there's still challenges. There happen to be serious problems with drugs and related abuses. And we tapped the expertise of Belfair and other people here in Cleveland to help train the staff at Havada Shomer, and we provide professional staff in Israel as well for the Army, because the Army was using untrained, wonderful women officers. They're all women. They have the guys who are the misfits being ordered around by women. But I asked about it, why is that? And they said to me, because the guys won't hit a woman. They would hit the guy. If a male officer talked to them about their behavior, but they won't do it to a woman. And the women are tough. I don't know if you ever get a chance to see a film that was made about this called Yes, Commander in English. You'll understand it. But the point is, we were there. We did it. And last year, 5,500 people went through the programs that we assist the Israeli Army. And we're pretty proud of that. With some other communities, we began a program with the Jewish agency called Youth Futures, working with elementary school kids at risk, giving them older mentors to work with these kids to help them develop programs around what they do in school. And one of the first ways we found the impact, this is in Beit Shan, was that the kids started attending better. Well, it's kind of like a given. The more time you spend in school, if the school is any good, the more likely you are to learn something. I mean, there's a lot of other factors, but if you don't show up, it's pretty likely you won't learn anything. We changed the attendance pattern through the Surround program we did with Youth Futures. That's 200 kids there. And then we're helping thousands of women in Israel with better medical advocacy through our women's health program. And we're working with Haredi women, Bedouin women, Arab women, Jewish women, and women in the Army. And we're so successful with that. And with the Haredi women, by the way, it's a big breast cancer awareness issue, which is very toughy. But the Ministry of Health has actually sought our consultation on women's health issues in Israel. And one of our staff has now become a member of the ministry's Council on Women's Health. And this, again, is not just professional paid people, but volunteers from Cleveland who have expertise in these areas have been going back and forth to Israel to help Israel improve in this area.
So you say we've been there, we've done it, and we've brought others with us. Where do you see us in the next decade in Israel and world Jewry? And what do you see us doing? And who do you see us bringing along in that ride?
Okay.
Okay. We'll
It's
have
okay
time
by
for
me.
we'll have time for questions. I don't know how many we have.
You look pretty good, you know. I mean,
Here.
I'm tired of him. But
No, got quite a few over here.
I'll answer the question very briefly. Right now, we're working hard at community development in Beit Shan as a model for community organization and development in other development towns in Israel, trying to tease out what kind of interventions are needed to make government work better and to have people take more responsibility for the direction of their communal lives. Israel, as many of you know, was founded on socialist principles. And among those socialist principles was a big belief that the state would take care of a lot of things. And so individuals, when it came to social issues, became very complacent on waiting for government to solve problems. They didn't have the not-for-profit or volunteer initiatives in their heads the way we just take it for granted. If de Tocqueville had come to Israel at the same stage of development of Israeli life as he did in American life, he wouldn't have found, or de Tocqueville, he wouldn't have found this great spirit of organizing and volunteerism. And so we've been working in Israel, in Beit Shan, in particular, on the model with something called Bridge to the Future. But we did it with an eye not just towards improving Beit Shan, but on introducing this model to other places in Israel. And I think this is one area that we're probably going to go further on. And then there's more about getting our kids over to Israel and stuff like that.
Well, let's go to some of the questions from the audience. We're not going to answer or ask the questions that have already been answered. We'll take new ones here. Does the Federation, what does the Federation do to help support Holocaust education?
Holocaust education. We have a new fund at the Federation that was created by a donor to help to promote a program called, is it Facing History? Facing History, which is a Holocaust education program. And so that's become a primary vehicle for doing that.
Okay. Next question. Does the Federation lobby the government in Columbus? If so, what are some examples?
Lobbying is a technical term. We have an office in Columbus led by an able woman named Joyce Garber Keller, who brings our needs to the attention of government, the executive branch and the legislature if necessary. A lot of it's around budget issues, so we're very concerned about the level of Medicaid support for the homes for the aged, or for welfare, or for aspects of Jewish Family Service Program, for mental health programs. So we're constantly talking to the legislators about adequate levels of funding for these critical services. Occasionally, you run into a special problem. There was a situation created through sequestration, I think, a year ago, where the kosher meals program was ditched by the county. But the county's money is from the state. And we didn't think this was such a good development. But we were having trouble convincing the people in charge at the county that this was an error. So we reached into the governor's office through our office in Columbus and explained to the governor that this probably was a mistake made by the county. And since the money comes from the state, maybe you could have a word with them. And to make a long story short, the program was restored, but the amount of money provided was only equal to the amount of money given to non-kosher food. And those of you who maintain kosher homes know that that doesn't work because you can't buy as much because the kosher food costs more for a variety of reasons, which we don't have to get into today. But the bottom line is we provided the extra money. We raised it, extra money from some folks to help us make up the difference, but the bulk of the money we got restored. That's one small example of what we do in Columbus.
Okay, another question. What is the Federation doing to improve the image of Israel in the local community? And probably first you should explain what you perceive as the image of Israel in the community.
Well, there is not a monolithic local community. There are many elements or segments of the local community. So I would say this. As best we can tell, the opinion makers in Cleveland are very understanding of Israel's situation, generally supportive of the actions Israel has to take, and are good friends. Most of the political leadership, in addition to those opinion makers, are understanding and are good friends. You occasionally have differences of opinion. We have a difference of opinion going on right now with Senator Brown over the Iran sanctions issue. But in 2012, when he was running again, he was very keen on showing his support for Israel and understanding. And Senator Portman has been solid in any number of ways. And Marcia Fudge, by the way, has been outstanding, more outstanding than many of her fellow colleagues in the Black Congressional Caucus. So I don't think she'd be able to do that if she didn't think she was also reflecting the interests of her constituency, though there are some issues there. But we've also been able to go to Israel with some leading ministers in the African American community who have a much more profound understanding of what's going on in Israel. So I actually think we're in pretty good shape, and we did not have to twist any arms to get wonderful responses from university presidents. Several of them, on their own, issued statements, and then all we would have to do is call someone and say, by the way, are you going to say anything? We didn't tell them what to say. We didn't tell them how to, and they would say, oh yeah, I'm glad you called. We actually have something that's coming out in a couple of days. Only one president turned us down. And like the donor who got 10 calls, he got 10 calls, and he said, leave me alone because I don't make political statements. He decided the issue was political. We don't agree with that. We don't think it's a political statement. We think it's a fundamental justice issue, but that's for another
Would
day.
you care to share which university?
Yeah, Kent State. Kent State. And the president and the board chair were both talked to by significant actors. And that's the principled stand they took. We don't agree with it. Happens.
Okay.
But it's not because they're against Israel. To the contrary. Just they took a stand that said we're not going to enter it.
Another question. Can you tell us what the Federation does to combat anti-Semitism?
Well, we do a lot of brain transplants, but we don't tell people. It's like that science fiction picture with the pods. Anyway, look, the Anti-Defamation League has a program to work in the Catholic schools and some of the Cleveland public schools to work on these fundamental issues. The American Jewish community is constantly in touch with all kinds of leadership in the general community on these kind of fundamental issues. People are taking on trips to Israel. There's discussions about how different group relations work. So we primarily work through them. The best antidote to anti-Semitism is education, bringing people together so that people can see that the differences are not what they think that they are, and people just really getting to know one another, and finally to call it out, to confront it when it's blatant and you see it, so that people know what it looks like. Well, I happen to think that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic because of the double standard it applies to Israel. And we're fighting them everywhere it pops up.
Are you seeing more anti-Semitism in the greater Cleveland area than in the past?
No. No, I think there's a lot less America is better, and Cleveland is better. I mean, you always got something going on, okay? We're never going to get down to zero. But it's a lot different than when I came in 1974. A lot different.
Okay. This is a long question.
I didn't take credit for it. It just, I noticed it.
Okay. This is a long question. It fills up almost one side of a card. And we only have about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Pope Francis defrocked 400 priests in 2 years. Yesterday, a scandal regarding child sex abuse occurred within the Chicago Catholic community. What is the Federation doing to encourage Jewish social agencies to identify abusers and protect children in the greater Cleveland community?
We're relying on the professional ethics of our agencies. And if we uncovered something, we wouldn't tolerate it, and we would shed the light of day on it.
Okay, next question. Why is there so much animosity between the Orthodox community, both here and across the country? I guess that means the Orthodox community, animosity toward everyone else.
What? Did somebody want to edit the question?
Yeah, the Federation, it seems to be animosity with the Federation and the Orthodox community.
Oh, okay, my mistake
Really?
then.
We don't feel that here. To the contrary, I believe, hey, I can't speak for everyone in the Orthodox community, but I believe that the majority of leadership in the Orthodox community in Cleveland has a very positive image of the Federation. I believe it is well earned through our support of the Hebrew Academy since 1948. We were the first federation in the United States to support an Orthodox day school. Actually, we were the first federation in the United States to support any day school. And it was a long time before anybody else followed. But we've been at it since 1948. We are the most generous supporter of any large city in the United States of our day schools. And most of the kids in our day schools are in the Orthodox community. We have helped our day schools with capital projects, as well as the scholarship and programmatic efforts that we've made. We've guaranteed construction bonds when asked. We put the Federation's balance sheet on the table to help our schools do their buildings when they want it. We made an effort to bring rationality to the kashrut supervision system. Poured a lot of money in, failed. Okay, but we tried. And the Federation itself makes sure that all of our offerings are kosher, supervised kosher, so that almost everyone who wants to eat there can eat there. And when I say almost, because there's always somebody who takes from somebody who's not around the supervised. But I can't deal with that. But 90%, I'm making up the number, of the Orthodox community can comfortably eat at any Federation function. And we, so I say, we support the schools and everything else, and we have a good number of Orthodox community members on our governance process, on our board, in our committees, and it's growing. And we're actually into, through some of our supporters, we're into some special projects now, specifically aimed at some of the needs in the Orthodox community.
Okay. Fundraising question. How do you think fundraising methods will change in the future?
Well, first, we believe there's no substitute for face-to-face solicitations and discussions. We believe that one Jew talking to another is the best way to do fundraising for Jewish needs. No phone call, no letter, no email, no text is going to substitute for a good face-to-face discussion, because basically the annual campaign, in my view, is an annual referendum on two things. How do you feel about the Federation, whatever, and how do you feel about being Jewish? I believe that the annual campaign gifts are partly a reflection on how you feel about being Jewish that year, as well as the Federation. So the personal solicitations are going to continue. What's changed is the need to have relationships with the donors that go beyond the annual solicitation. Once upon a time, in the dark mist of 50 years ago, people understood what it was to give to the community and why, and they did. You would say that you had a lot of jokes about the UJA, but you had a lot of respect for what the UJA was doing for our people. Or I could go back, 65 years, right, the years after the war. So everybody got it. When we didn't act together, we were murdered. When we acted together, we built a state, and we all wanted to be part of it. And when the call came from the Federation, yeah, I'm in. I had a good year, I had a bad year. You're pressuring me, you're not pressuring, but I'm in. And the conversation was done. And the annual referendum took place in 60 seconds. Okay? Today, because of the changing nature of the philanthropic environment, donors, especially donors of larger amounts of money, they want to have a relationship. They want to spend time with you. They want to understand you better. They want to touch you. They want to feel you. They want to influence what's going on. As much as they trust other people, they trust themselves more. And so we're in a stage where we need to have deeper relationships. So in addition to the volunteer soliciting, there's also a need now for professionals to engage, because the kind of discussion some people want to have, they don't necessarily want to have with a business associate or a friend, but they're willing to have it with a professional to talk about what their aspirations are for themselves, for their kids, for the Jewish people. And so that part of fundraising is changing. It's going to get more costly, but it might be more meaningful over time.
So the next 2 or 3 questions have to deal with the younger generation. Do you think the younger generation will support Federation and agencies as well as their parents did?
I'm the wrong one to ask, because my father sold Oldsmobiles, and you always heard that, well, it's not your father's Oldsmobile, and it just drove me crazy. But I'm an optimist. I think the answer is yes. I think every generation needs to work out for itself what it wants to be, who they want to be, and how they want to organize their community. The mistake you can make in our work is to assume that the Jewish community that was built in 1950 is fine in 2013. We're not the same federation that we were in 1950. But we have wonderful young people who understand what it means to come together and make a difference in the world. They even understand that they can't do it alone. Not everybody is Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates. Not everybody's even Mort Mandel and Barbara. There are plenty of others who understand that if they're going to make a difference in the world, they have to join with others to do that. And one of the effective ways to do that is to join in the Jewish community and harness the Federation to do that. We can turn left. if enough people want to go left. You build a consensus and you turn left. I can tell you that we are into Jewish education in 2014 in ways when I came here in 1974, the leadership would have said, never, over my dead body. In 1974, we had a church-state issue in the Federation. Synagogues, congregational schools, all that stuff, that's for them. We're the Federation. That's not, we're social services. We're Israel. We're not Jewish education. Okay, we got the Hebrew Academy. Okay, then we had Agnon School. Then we had Solomon Schechter. Then we had Mizrahi. Believe me, they never would have, in 1974, they never saw that coming. Maybe Agnon, because Agnon I think was already underway, but they basically didn't see it coming. And there were people who didn't want to see it coming, but we did. And we're different. When I came here in 1974, Federation and rabbis, they thought it was a competition. I personally didn't understand it, but what was I? I was a kid. What do I know? Today, we're not competition. Today, we're partners. We got the same goal, a vibrant, meaningful Jewish people. It's very different. So Federation changes, the nature of the community changes. And the next generation, they're going to change it. The big difference is they're going to change it online. And they're going to find out in 20 years that an online existence is missing something. And they're going to want to open up the Jewish news again and touch it.
Thank you. So, two questions, opposite ends,
Yeah.
similar.
Right.
How do we attract more young people to Cleveland and Jewish involvement? The other question is, what's the Federation doing to stop young people from leaving Cleveland?
Well, the most important way you bring people to Cleveland is connecting them to jobs. Jobs are the single biggest driver of these decisions. The good news is that most of our families are functional, and therefore their kids don't mind coming back if there's a job. But you got to find the jobs. So when Cleveland grows, a la the Global Cleveland Initiative, and the reason for the self-interest about raising Cleveland up, then there'll be more jobs, and our kids will find opportunities here that they currently seek elsewhere. A lot of people are telling us they just can't afford New York. You all know what we think are nightmares about the cost of living in New York. It's no better in San Francisco. It's getting worse in San Francisco. Chicago is becoming a little more expensive. People want to come back. And they realize we've got the assets here. And they know we have the best Jewish community. Okay? There may be Jewish communities as good as us. There's no Jewish community that's better than us. The only exception of a category is restaurants. But once you put aside the kosher restaurants, nobody can beat us. They can join us, but they can't beat us. And to that end, last year we had, I think I have this number right, 400 inquiries from people from out of town. And and we worked with half of them ultimately in networking, and at least 54, I think, or was 45, 54, 50-something, 57 people relocated here from out of town that we know of through our direct efforts.
Okay. This one you, I think, have answered throughout the night. What does the Federation do best besides raise money? So is there anything else that you want to highlight that you haven't yet?
Yeah. The thing the Federation does best is raise people. The money follows the people. We train leadership in a variety of ways, to take on the challenges of helping the Jewish people and the Jewish community operate in the future. And we do it consciously, and the people that we train go on to lead in congregations, they lead in agencies, they lead in national arenas, and then they do good things in life. So we're really about the people, the who, as much as we are about the money.
Okay, we'll put a close on the night with the final question. What's the biggest difference in Federation work between now and when you started?
The agenda of the Federation has gotten much larger because the nature of organizational life in Cleveland changed. We have less affiliation through organizations, and things that other organizations did in the past have now come to the Federation, like cemeteries. It's a small example, but I think it makes the point. We have congregations that have disappeared, and with them, their funds, or anybody who cares about what happens to a cemetery, except the people who have relatives buried at the cemetery. So one of the things the Federation is doing is we're out there cutting the grass, getting volunteers to help us, but more importantly, we're taking responsibility for cemeteries. Believe me, in 1974, nobody was thinking about cemeteries. And there's other aspects of life. The other big difference is our commitment in Jewish education. Again, as I said, in 1974, it was modest. It was devoted towards providing support to what was then called the College of Jewish Studies, the Bureau of Jewish Education, the Hebrew Academy, and Agnon was coming along. The agenda today is much larger. We work with the same entities. There's more entities, but the Bureau of the Jewish Education Center is a very different entity. We provide very different kinds of leadership and cooperation with our congregations and our schools. So the whole congregation-federation relationship, hugely different than it was in 1974. And the relationship with Israel is different. In 1974, we were coming off the Yom Kippur War, and the attitude was Israel needs us. They're strong militarily, but they're poor economically. And by the way, the money we raised in 1973 for the Yom Kippur War went right into supporting the Israel higher education system. That's what happened to the extra money from the campaign and was needed. Today, the whole relationship with Israel is different. It's a whole subject for another time. But today, Israel is a strong partner of the Jewish people around the world, and not just when it comes to physical rescue like in Debbie. Today, Israel is our partner, we hope, in what will be the spiritual rescue of the Jewish people in the generation to come.
So you left yourself open for an invitation to come back and talk about the relationship with Israel more. And I hope we can get you to do that. Thank you both so much, and thank you for taking the time, all of you joining with us, and I hope to see you again Sunday night, Jewish Mysticism here. Good night.